I am joined today by a career recruiter turned career coach, Holly Lee. Holly, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
Yeah, I'm thrilled you're here. And it's exciting for me, especially because we're going to be publishing this also on your YouTube channel. So I'm giving people a live look at the blanket. Well, let's get into you a little bit. You have a really unique background because you spent a good 20 years as a technical recruiter and also as a recruiting leader. And then you recently, or maybe not recently, but you have transitioned and now you're a career coach. And so I maybe can we just go back to when you were a talent leader and what that experience was like? Maybe what about being a recruiter for so long led you to believe that this was what you wanted to do, was to turn around and help other people with their careers?
Ironically, Rob, you're one of the very few people who have asked me that question.
Oh, come on.
I know, right? Being a recruiter, the first 10 years or so of my career, I just love matching people to the right role. As you know, being part of Hired, our job in the recruiting world is we're being compensated or measured based on you accepting the offer. But to me, that was never the right move for me. Which was why I moved from an IC to a leadership role, having the opportunity to strategically train and mold a recruiting workforce into building great candidate experience and don't just make it hire. So that's a transition there. Preached to myself and took my own course. I recently designed an 8 weeks career accelerator program. I did that because I had to pause for a second. I'm going into Amazon, and I know that my passion is to teach, to train, really develop people as a on a career development level. I know that as a recruiting leader, I could do that, but to an extent, right? For all of you who's listening, you know if you are a leader, you're in the meeting at least 80 to 90% of your day, and you probably do your actual job in supporting your staff probably an extra 80% of the time. So for me, I just want 100% of my time to support the right tech leaders in struggling with crossroads and being so miserable. By the way, this is exactly from their own words. And just finding happiness in, what does that mean for them? What gets them really excited in the right job?
What do you mean by crossroads?
There, I know because I've received several hundreds of messages on my LinkedIn every single week. I have at least what 6,500, 7,000 LinkedIn connection. I want to say 50 to 60% are recruiting professionals.
Uh huh.
I can confidently say that at least 80% of you have reached out to me, and that's a very high number. It was to the point where I was so overwhelmed on just giving free advice. This is another reason that I've turned this into my business now. I'm literally sitting at home, like talking to all of my friends, making sure that they're making the right decisions and trying to walk them through my process, just as a friend or as a former peer to coach them around don't leave your job for another job because you're not happy with your manager or you went through a reorg because you'll be facing the exact same thing on the next job. Take the
Yes.
time to learn about yourself. Reaching out to any career coaches and not just myself, we can give you all the tools, all the guidance, but you have to do the homework on yourself. Please do me that favor. I
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Absolutely.
I feel like I have to repeat that word, Rob, because a lot of the recruiters that came to me, Holly, can you please help me pass my interview with Amazon? I'm like, well, did you do the homework that week? What we've talked about? No. Okay. Well, tell me about yourself. What do you want to do next? I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's like, can you help me pass the interview at Amazon? Well, I'll do you one better. Like that assumes that the job is the one that you want and is going to be good for you, right? And if Amazon comes knocking, it's like, okay, there's this huge company and they have this reputation for being a good employer for full-time employers anyway. And they pay a lot of money. So like why wouldn't you indulge that if an Amazon recruiter reaches out to you and wants to talk to you? But again, like if you are just going to be in process with them because they wanted to be in process with you or because it seems like the air quotes right thing to do, those aren't the right reasons to take a job, right?
Yeah. Just that I've seen so many repetitive patterns from so many people. And I just, it's crazy. Most recently, I was with one of the multi-million dollar employer just about 8 months ago. And then as soon as I left that organization, I would say, again, at least 80, 90% of my peers all reach out to me. I mean,
Really?
it's very, It's saddening to me that as a recruiter and also as a recruiting leader, it is our job to help our staff. Like our job is to support them, period. Right. So that makes me wonder, if you're a recruiting manager and you're also coming to me at the same thing, I would expect a people manager to do their due diligence. And there's a lot of courses within, especially those big corporation that you can learn. And even for recruiters, look within your company and see if there's classes that you can take to help you grow in regards to career development. And there should be some of them that's available as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I want to go back to something you said that kind of caught my attention of this difference between passion and energy. Because you said that I seem passionate about what I do, which I'm glad to hear. But that's an important distinction, right? That between like what you're passionate about, you might go out and do it because you're like aligned with its mission. And even on days where you don't feel the energy and you're not excited, you will still slog through it and get the reps in because you are passionate about it. But this notion of like what is responsible for the flywheel that energizes me and makes me feel alive and lets me do things outside of work and I'm not drained at the end of the day because I'm re-energized by this. What is the difference between those two things? Besides what I just said, I guess.
Yes, you basically said it all. Let me give you an actual example here. When I started my gig at Amazon and I was there for about, I want to say 6.5 years or so, I loved it. I loved every single pieces of my experience, and a lot of my viewers and professional asked me why I left. And I am actually going to make a video eventually about this, but here's a short version. I thought that my passion was to travel, be an international recruiter, which I did, and Amazon gave me that opportunity in retail. I traveled around the world and I built Deaf Center for 2 years. I loved it. Who wouldn't love it? Hotel points, flights, premium, like diamond, name it. So I've gotten a lot of those perks. But eventually, after being with an organization for a couple years, I started to ask myself, I'm like, wait a minute, I what do I really love about my job, and why am I even asking myself these questions? Is it time for me to look outside of Amazon? I start taking out a piece of paper. I start writing down what I love and what's next for me. Basically, I've worked for all of the big companies. I work for startup. You mentioned sales and account manager. I grew up at agency recruiting for 7 years. Right? What's next? And then I thought, wait a minute. That all the time that I love working for Amazon, traveling around the world, partnering with the business, I love working with business leaders. I love working with leaders. I love helping them grow their team and not just career development. And I love professional who has experience pointing them to the right directions. And I can't really do that as a full time job 100% of my time. That's when I started being more serious in planting the seeds. So, as you know, you've been doing podcasts for quite a long time now. And one day I hope to be as good as you are on my YouTube channel. It's getting there. It's only 6 months old. So, but it took almost a year just to plant the seeds. This is why, this is what I want to do. And one would ask, Holly, you're crazy. Why did you leave a high paying job with all these big companies? And as you know, content creator, we don't just get paid because we have content out there. And it could take us anywhere from a few hours to a full week just to make one 10-minute clip. But for me, that's what's exciting. I love it. I love it. I'm not, and this is for all of the listeners out there. If you focus on just like the brand name, the sexy gadget, and I'm just throwing this out there. Please don't get mad at me, Amazon, like the Alexa devices or the AR, VR, Facebook, anything like that. You have to look beyond that because I guarantee you guys, you can go in and work at the hottest project out there within a month or three. You will go through a reorg because that's very typical of tech companies and in recruiting. I have not worked for any organization where we don't go through a reorg within 3 months. So there will be a lot of changes. So what you're passionate, you think you like, you may end up not working in a cool gadget to end up on a .com space. That's what I mean by your passion will change as time goes. It's more important to do the work that where you can actually come alive, like Rob and myself.
Right, yeah. I it's so important too to peel the layers back. So in the example of working on AR VR for Facebook or Alexa for Amazon, if you confront yourself and you say, "Oh, well, I really want to work on whatever technology is on the bleeding edge. That's important to me." Okay, great. Why? Is it because that is like a sexy thing to have on a resume? Is it because you're like, well, I'll be an early adopter and I'll be really employable in a few years when this is more widespread? These are external reasons. These are not reasons about what you love and what you want to be good at and what you desire to be. And if you dig deeper and maybe you get to that root of truth of like, it is really important for me to be working on whatever is on the bleeding edge just because I love it. I'm curious, it's exciting and new for me. Then it won't matter about a reorg won't matter to you, right?
Mhm.
Because you'll have that one value. And so this notion of grappling with value versus identity is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. And the idea is that if you are like, I aspire to be a I aspire to be a VP of recruiting for an enterprise company in the next 5 years. Like, okay, great. That's a really good goal. But a lot can happen in 5 years. And maybe you don't end up as a VP of recruiting, but you have a job that you really, really like and you're very fulfilled in other ways. If you look back to you setting that goal, you didn't reach it. Have you failed as a person? Like, no, of course you haven't failed. So, this idea of like, if you set this one goal out there and you don't reach it, that's okay, and instead, if you focus on the values of the things you like. So if you're like, instead of being a VP of recruiting, I want to work for a company who I really care about. I want to be able to use my gifts. I want to really like my coworkers. I want to make more money. Those are all things independent of a title or a brand or a job, right?
Mhm.
And you can satisfy those and be true to yourself. And it can look like a lot of different things on your LinkedIn profile. So this notion, and I think it's similar to the passion versus energy, identity versus values. If you set a very singular goal, you may feel like a fulfilled, progressed person, even if you didn't hit that one goal. And that doesn't make you a failure.
Right. And there's, and I always think that I know it's a little cliche, but the next door will open for you and there will be light down that tunnel. There will be a lot more opportunities where you could really discover what your full potential is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what are the, again, I like going back to this notion of how can people make this work for them? Like, we've gone over some of it, but what are the questions we can ask ourselves about like what energizes me? What do I really love? Like, how do we get specific about those things?
One thing that I really love in one of my course exercise is just making a list. It's very simple, right? Just making a list of where I call them superpowers. What are your superpowers that you know that you're great at? Superpowers are basically skills that you are great at in your industry. In this case, recruiting, right? Is it closing a candidate over the phone? Is it sourcing? Is it project management, as in like recruiting events? Is it managing your partnership with your business, right? What is it? So list out all of it. You're not going to you're not going to stare at all of it, but you have to list out all of it and then identify the top three that is the most important to you. And on the next session, there's three columns. The middle column is which one of your superpowers are you getting in your current job, and which one do you think that you need more of as far as improvement? And the last column is what do you think is next for you that's going to burst out that excitement? What is
Yeah.
it? I mean, not everyone have the opportunity and know how it feels like to wake up excited and actually put their shoes on and run to the office, right? Well, now it's virtually. Run virtually, opening your laptop. Not everyone have experienced that, and that's okay. It's okay. There is no such thing as a time limit for you to discover yourself. So it's really defining the vision to be very clear with who you are, what you want, and you could always get there. I know that because I recently did a career transition myself and starting from scratch, right?
Right.
And as a career coach, it has a lot to do with the recruiting background, a training background, and also as a recruiting leader. So you do the same thing, even as a sourcer. There's so much work you could do. You could actually own a podcast just like Rob, or do what I'm doing. I'm not even like jokingly aside. You have to ask yourself, what is it? Do you enjoy getting on the phone? Because that's what recruiters do all day long. If you don't, okay, what else do you want to do next? And if you truly don't have an answer for it, then go do your due diligence and look at some common position title and read the job descriptions, or look within your network. right? Start there. Hey, I'm thinking about being a product manager and actually owning a product on the business side. Can you tell me exactly what you do?
Yes. And wow, so interesting to identify the things, as you say, you're a superhero on, and then also to reflect on those because you may find that the things you're really good at, you also don't like, right? Like you may have become really good at it because your organization sorely needed it and you cared about doing the job. So you became really good at it. An example from my life, I got pretty good at paid search and using Google AdWords and retargeting software and things like that. And so I ended up doing a lot of it and I hated it. It was the worst. I was like telling my boss, please don't make me do this. Don't make me spend my life inside the Google AdWords dashboard. Don't make me turn human inquisitive behavior into zeros and ones. And so eventually we're able to manage me out of doing that.
I love that.
And it was also interesting too that like when you're really good at something, mastery can breed complacency because you know you're really good at it. So you don't worry about getting better. And where you do worry about getting better are these things where you're like, it's just challenging enough that's not super frustrating. It's like intriguing to you. And those are the areas that you can grow and be energized by. So the idea is to find like the Goldilocks zone, the like sweet spot of what am I decent at that I can get a lot better at because that will allow you to answer questions about where you can grow to become more of a well-rounded individual, knowing a lot of or professional, knowing a lot of different skills, and you won't be complacent because you're not that good at it. You know you have a lot of distance to go. So if you answer the question, what am I a superhero at? That could be followed by, well, I would also really like to get better at this because I'm not as good at it or it's more fun to me than this thing that I've become good at out of necessity that I don't really like. And it's the exact reason why people come to you and say that they're miserable is because they got really good at something they didn't like and then they had to keep doing it because they were good at it.
But I can tell you this, though, from personal experience working with several, actually quite a few clients. Once you have identified what you want to do and you're not good at it, guess what? Because you enjoyed so much, it shows.
Right. Yeah.
And in turn, you'll end up getting more attention than you expected.
Yes. Yep. I love it. Well, Holly, I mean, this has been great. We're creeping up on optimal podcast length here. I will put it on you to kind of delicately thread the needle here at the end. Is there just any kind of parting advice you would give to talent acquisition folks in particular who are maybe coming to a crossroads or just want to be critical about what the next 5, 10 years of their career are going to look like?
Yes, and I'll keep this brief. I know that we're running out of time a little bit. I want to talk about very high level three key points. The first one is um, for those of you who are thinking about being a people manager, please, you have to do your due diligence and talk to all the recruiting manager or higher level folks that you know and see if that's the right scope for you. It's very important to learn more about the position before you move into it. It takes a very long time for any position from IC to leader. You don't want to waste your time and say, what? This is what you guys do? No, it's not for me. I want to go out there and save the world, not save the email inbox meeting and all that. There's a lot more of that. I love my time there, but it's not for everyone. And if you don't enjoy dealing with the personality and complaints, protecting your team, putting people on pits, growing individual, then it's not the right fit for you. So please stop asking me that. Second thing is it's the money thing, right? Um, I do turn my back on clients when I ask them, where do you want to go to? I want to see how I can support you and help you get there. Well, Holly, I want to make more money. Okay, fair. Define that. So if I hear the common thread that, you know what, I love my job, there's nothing wrong with it. I want to do the same thing. All I care about is money. I don't care about anything else. So to me, as a business owner, I probably shouldn't take that as an effect because my goal is genuinely helping the right people because it's also my reputation out there. So it's fair to be in the market rate, but you can't just be so fixated on money, money, money to get to where you want to. Let's just say that you are clear and you know the next position for you at a different employer. So you have to keep an open mind. Okay? Keep an open mind. And the last thing is you just have to be very good with your network in the recruiting industry. Everyone know each other. Everybody does. I recently did a startup gig, two of them as a principal consultant. And guess what? Some of the folks there know some of my buddy in EMEA, which is Europe, right? I'm like, how, right? There's like a lot of connections. Someone that I know my buddies like in Texas. So it's all about the word of mouth there. And to get into the right job or to get into any company, it's who you know. It's not applying for a job. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the recruiters should be aware of that.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Well, Holly, again, this has been so great. Thank you for tuning in. This has been an absolute blast.
Thank you so much.
And to all of you out there in podcast land, thank you for tuning in one more time. I've been Rob Stevenson. Holly Lee has been Holly Lee, and you've all been amazing, wonderful talent acquisition darlings. Have a spectacular week and happy hunting. There we go. We're out.